What's up, guys? This is a Wheels Up podcast, and just like always, we're going to talk about all kinds of different sports. There's no live sports going on for me and Mike tonight, but we do have a special guest. We got our man NFL Odd out over here, and we're bringing you another interview. And the cool thing is, I just want to bring on people that I find interesting. And one of the more interesting things about this man that caught my eye initially is he is a family man to its core, and it was obvious right from the get go. This guy believes in a lot of family values. He's a dad, and he had his kid on there. And I really love that you had a generational sports feel. Like I think a lot of people do that though in sports. They box people in, or we box ourselves into like, oh well, I watched this sport with my dad, or I watched this sport when I was in high school. So I'm not going to watch this sport because I had this preconceived notion about it. Like I just got into golf like 3 years ago, and I've really been enjoying it. And people were like, "Oh, of course you hit 30. Of course you got into golf." But I don't care. You can use that stereotype if you want. I'm just enjoying like all of the younger guys. When I grew up, Tiger Woods kind of took me out of it. I was never a Tiger guy, and then the kind of stuff happened with him off the course, and just morally didn't agree with a lot of what he was doing. So like he wasn't appealing, and then all these young bombers started making all these golfers mad. Bryson beefed up and started hitting the ball really hard and ticking off all these old golfers, and I'm like, you know what? All these old guys are getting mad. I think it's about time I check out some golf. So yeah, that's what intrigued me about you, man, is that you would talk in the same sports that we talk, on a nightly basis, but you were doing it your own way in a different way. And then you've been having people on that, people be like, oh, a small podcast couldn't do that. But you've been interviewing some big names in moving and shaking. And whenever I see somebody jumping through hoops that I want to jump through, I always kind of use that as a springboard to like, hey, I need to get this guy on. Hey, I need to get this guy here and kind of learn from him. So give,
Yeah,
give the people your pitch, man. I don't want to steal your spotlight here.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I started this, as networking, and I told you guys, selfishly to kind of learn more about other teams' fantasy football, options on their teams, and really, it's the more you kind of connect with people, the more you learn. And because when you look at national media, they don't have a lot of time to spend on some of these teams. You learn more from local podcasters and writers than you do national media. And I think that's, for me, that's what I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed, then even connecting with some athletes, and I think like even a Canadian Football League guy ended up a player, getting into the USFL. The USFL is good. Because obviously it's new, and it's something you said I can do with my son, and it's probably been better to do that with him than NFL or anything else, because I am a Bears fan, and he is a Packers fan. So and he usually chooses the team that is against mine. So but this has been fun, that we can agree on something and really just break down a really cool new sport. And so for me, it's just it's been fun, connecting with people, and I think it really opens your mind to not only the connections, but then just more knowledge about football in general. And I think when you look at the people that are on TV or radio, really people get smart about sports by talking more to more smart people about sports. And I love the discourse, and I just I've enjoyed it. So I definitely appreciate being able to come on with you guys.
Yeah, and I would say like I think a lot of times people forget like how adults can learn from kids. What have you learned most about doing the podcast with your son, specifically the generational gap? Like, do you think that has made you a better podcaster or a better listener? Like, how has it in tuned your sports knowledge or your vision? Like, does it bring back some nostalgic moments? Like, what does it do for you?
Yeah, I mean, actually, in the background right now, I have the Rams Titans game on, Super Bowl, and that kind of takes me back, right? And so, whether it's doing some of these podcast interviews or USFL, it takes me back to when I was a kid and playing some of the Madden video games and kind of like trying to call them and like commentate on them as I went. And I see him kind of doing that, and then it's kind of cool to be able to share that with him and just kind of step back and let him have comments and thoughts about players and teams and where he thinks they may go. So getting him kind of passionate and just having him experience doing that because is important. I think the more you do something, the more confident you can become, and just the more fun you can have with it. So
yeah, I bet it's awesome. You play Madden with your kids?
I've tried. So I have an Xbox 360, and I've tried, and he's a lot like me. That if he's not doing well, when I was younger, if I wasn't doing well, I got frustrated and wanted to turn it off.
Right.
And so that's been fun though to share that with him when he's been interested. And he does some other like Roblox football games and things like that, and he'll actually commentate on that. So that it's kind of cool just to be able to share that with him. But he actually last year was his first year of tackle football, and
That's fun.
yeah. So and it's interesting because his mind is always working. So he was doing playing safety, and he's able to just kind of in his mind see where the players are going to be, and he actually called a few plays, told the coaches that this play is going to go this way, and it did. And so there was one he actually had on 4th and goal, he had a nice like stuff right at the goal line, safety, and it was just kind of like one of those things like a cool dad moment, like
And
yeah.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine, but I can't, know what that's like. But I bet it's awesome because that sounds awesome. Like, you got to be proud as hell. Like,
it's just it's fun to be
just
able to
like scream out loud. Like, I feel like I would be like, my parents were always went to my games, and I appreciate that so much. Like, because I know obviously some people can't make the time, with their schedules, and it's not perfect for everyone, but my parents always really did their best to make all my games, and they were pretty calm. But I feel like I would be like, "That's my boy!" Like, I would be so amped, especially if it was something real, like, not. There's no way my kid could dunk, but this is a hypothetical because he'd have my genes, and I can't jump more than like a sheet of paper. But yeah, I'd be like, what? I'd lose my mind probably. Like, and I don't know. I just think that's got to be awesome when that stuff's going on. So that's really cool.
Well,
Yeah.
As a disabled man, I can never play, so I was always the coach, throughout my primitive years, and then watching my nephew grow up, man, I was like that Jim Harbaugh coach, in the stands. You had. You know how he had the court guy following him around in Michigan when he first got there? That'd be like me if I was watching my nephew at the high school games. I was just pacing the bleachers all the time, yelling and screaming. But I guess that's the cool part, though, is like you get to see it through his eyes, but he gets to see it through yours. So, like, what's the one thing that you've taught him that you're really proud of that you think is going to be like viable in the next 10 years? Because I've heard, fathers say like, oh, I've taught my kids, the 1990s Super Bowl or something, Steve McNair against the Rams. But like, what's the one like lesson you might have taught them in the past that you think is like going to help them as a sports fan in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'd say probably the biggest thing, especially with podcasting, I think is, and with anything is, obviously you got to practice at it, and the more you do, and then the studying part of it too, because you can, he's kind of at that point where he sees me, at night sometimes just get up and do the podcast, but he doesn't see all the steps behind it, right? Like. like you've got, some of these things coming out, on the bottom. He doesn't see all the production part of it. And it's funny because like, I don't even do a lot of production, but I do, have banners and questions and different things you prepare ahead of time. So you have to prepare ahead of time. You can't just like turn the light on and be like, oh, we're going to do it. You have to kind of be ready and, just have some questions. And that's why you like, I think I've tried to model that, when he's kind of listening to my interviews, because it was really funny because, as kids can sometimes be negative, and the first time he really listened and heard, and he was like, oh, Dad, you're pretty good at that. I'm like, oh, it was kind of nice. I'm like, oh, my son's saying something good. And then, so like, then I knew he was listening. And, so, then he could, see that, okay, this is possible, so I think that's one of the lessons is, if you try something, get something started, you can learn about it, and it's possible to do that, and then you kind of learn about it and learn how to prepare for it. So whether it's podcasting or football, it's just the preparing and just then doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I get lucky, because me and Mike just have good chemistry. It's like, it's one of those things, the lights come on and you either got it or you don't. I think me and Mike are just naturally always had it. And that's what I always appreciate about him. He's a humble man, so he's not going to probably like this. He's going to get a little rosy red in the cheeks on him. But like, without him, I don't think this podcast is possible. Without you taking a chance. And, it's almost like you got to close your eyes as the guy that's starting out these podcasts too, because you got to pretend like your audience is bigger than it is. But then, like, when you get invited onto a podcast and you think you're bigger, maybe you are bigger than the podcast you're going on, you got to remember, like, hey, I was that guy hitting up people on Twitter, desperately trying to get views and likes. And so networking is huge. I'm a big Lions fan. Your son being a Packers fan. And so you guys just want to come on during the season and we can talk about our division. And, I'm all for networking. As a coach, that's the number one thing you learn is the more people you can talk to and take ideas from. It's almost like that zone concept. If you're a coach, it's like the zone works because you're filling gaps where people aren't, and that's all you want to do in the podcast space too. Is just go where people aren't going.
Yeah, and that's what I do with the Friesen 4 NFC North podcast that we have, and would definitely love to have got you guys on there as well. And I think that works. It works when you have that chemistry, but then you kind of allow each other to just kind of have just commentary on stuff, and then kind of react to that. And I think it can be fun. I mean, the cool thing about what we're doing is that. All it takes is, just kind of basically trying, just putting yourself out there and having fun. And I never really, think about, how many views, this and that. I mean, I definitely look at, some of that, but for me, I just enjoy doing it. And I think that's important. If you enjoy doing it, I think the audience and people will see that and then react to that and then, want to connect even more.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I just like talking sports usually. Like sometimes we're watching a game live and just commentating or doing UFC, either commentating live and having filler conversation and all the downtime where it doesn't have to be, UFC related like a broadcast. It can be, but it's just we're just having a conversation like exactly like we're at the bar watching the game. Or tonight there's no, I'm watching the hockey game, but you don't have to watch the same game. It's just like, it's just a free sports conversation. But yeah, obviously it generally stays in the sports realm. Sometimes we go a little off topic, but that's cool too. If it's food, movies, I don't know. I'm good at those two things. Some other things that I don't want to talk about, but
So it's interesting you bring up UFC because that's definitely something that I don't know a lot about, and that would actually be something I'd be interested in doing a podcast about because I started doing that some of these interviews and I've kind of come across some interesting characters. I actually did one with a former professional bull rider. What's the movie? Movie 8 Seconds.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I think I've heard of that too. Yeah.
the main guy in 8 Seconds. He's one of the best of all time who ended up dying, and then that's the way they do the movie. So the guy that I interviewed, and I can send it to you. The guy that I interviewed, he actually rode at all these different bull ridings before it was the PBR. So he rode, and just it was interesting to hear that old school how they did it back then, and so like that, I think that's allowed me to just kind of whether it's that or anyone about the football is just kind of learning about new things. And I think that's cool too. I think, I don't know a lot about hockey, that would be, something eventually that I would do. And for me, I think anytime you have a conversation, you can definitely learn something.
Well, this Saturday, we're actually trying to organize a watch party for the UFC. So if you want to stop in, if you want to, because I think it's going to be one of the best cards we've seen in a long time. There's a lot of good fights on there. And what me and Mike always talk about as fans of that sport is like, it's a pretty easy concept, right? This guy is trying to beat up this guy. Okay.
Or girl. Well, girl versus girl, not guy versus girl.
But that also speaks to how awesome that sport is. It's like, they have women headlines.
And this is the Joanna fight, right? Joanna, these two had one of the best fights, not woman fights, just one of the best fights I've ever seen. It was a 5-round absolute war, and the one chick had the biggest hematoma I've ever seen. Normally it's just like a welt. Like I've bumped my head and gotten a welt on my forehead, and it's small. And then I've seen hematomas that are big, like the size of I don't know, like this. Her whole entire forehead was. I don't know if you've seen this picture online, but she legitimately looked like an alien. Logan, I don't know if you can get that picture.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about. Like, this is what you might see if you check out this UFC pay-per-view. It is pay-per-view, so you do have to shell out the money for it, and you have to have ESPN Plus. But this fight was awesome, and I remember I had bet the Weili, so I was rooting for her, and a lot of times I know that when I'm watching a fight, if I bet a person, I am judging the fight based on like wanting them to win. So I have a little bit of bias, but I also know when my fighter's losing. Usually I know when I'm beat. And I Weili won, but I watched the fight a second time because I remember thinking like, man, this fight was amazing. Like, holy cow, so much action. And I really thought on the replay, I was like, man, not only was it really amazing to watch the second time around, already knowing who won and whatever, but man, Joanna really could have won that fight, even though she had this giant mushroom head. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Other than she looked like an alien.
It looks like Hey Arnold. It really did. I mean, that's what it honestly looked like. But don't forget, Teixeira's on that card. Glover, Teixeira's on the card.
That's not even the main event. The main event is sick too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so is the Russian assassin. Why am I blanking?
Yuri Prochazka? He's not Russian though.
No. I'm talking about what's her name? I can see her face.
Valentina
Shevchenko. Yeah.
Oh, she's on. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so
I'm telling you,
two amazing female fights.
Yeah, this card is loaded. So yeah, if you want to stop in on Saturday, we're just going to be.
Although Valentina is gonna. Oh, I don't know too much about this other girl other than she's a pretty top up and comer. I forget her name. But Valentina, she kind of just runs over everybody. And when I say that, it's not like she's a truck. She's finesse and she's a impeccable striker with her feet, with her hands. She's a weapon.
When you talk about, like, obviously the UFC, that, I mean, that's really taken over from, regular boxing, right? I mean, boxing, I mean, it's not really as much of a thing, right?
Well, that's the thing is you're almost getting these like crossover events with these like UFC fighters and boxers alike that want to like do cross promotions. Like you saw Conor McGregor and Floyd,
Hmm.
Mayweather, and now we're talking about you know, the Gypsy King might be coming over to the UFC, and so like I just and you got the Paul brothers, the younger generation like their son are probably hyped about situations like that. John Jones has talked about doing some like crossover boxing events. Anderson Silva, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his name, but he's doing some
Hmm.
boxing now. He's retired from the UFC. So like, I just think fighting in general has kind of like become a circus in like the best of ways. Like they just fully embraced it.
And that's got to be smart, just the more money, the better, I'm sure.
So all the money, the problem is, and it is a circus, and it's good for just talking conversation, but the money for the fighters is all in boxing. Unless you're
Really?
a
Okay.
UFC champ and a veteran, your contract isn't that like basically like and then it also depends on if you win in the UFC. Like basically you just get paid double what your normal salary was if you win. But most of these guys, if they're not the champ or like not a former champ, the really good guys are only making, and I know this sounds crazy to scoff at this, but six figures. Like they're, the really good guys are making like 100,000 a fight, and then another 100,000 if they win. But compared to boxing, where you can have one fight for tens of millions of dollars, that's why all these guys are itching to get out of the UFC when they're later in their career and just trying to like Anderson Silva. I don't know what and he's a different story too, because he probably made a decent amount of money in the UFC because he was a champ for so long. He was one of the best guys. I think Logan just I saw his screen. I thought his eyes were closed for a second.
He is frozen. Yeah.
I thought he fell asleep for a second because it like froze when he blinked. I was like, Logan? But then I was like, nah, okay, it just froze. He'll be back in a sec. I'm pretty sure it lets him come back in, or
Yeah.
he'll text me if I have to invite him back in or something like that. Maybe he did already.
Yeah, this happened to me before too. Yeah.
Nah, it's all good. It's usually one short stint, but
yeah, that's interesting with the I hadn't thought about that from the money. I mean, is that why
that's what all is controlling everything? But go ahead.
Is that why they have like, so many UFC fights? Like, I don't know what number we're on now.
They're what is it, 270 something, 274, 273. So those are the pay-per-views specifically, and then they'll have they built this new facility in Vegas where they can host fights, and so they call that the Vegas fights, and they're always not pay-per-views. They're during the pandemic they might have hosted some there, but the Vegas cards are specifically called like Vegas 35 or something like that, or 30, and then it's just numbered just like the other ones. But those are like, I don't know, they have a bunch of different names, but the when it's just like UFC 274, that's pay-per-view, and those are the best cards.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, like, how UFC does that, where the Super Bowl is at 50 what, right? I don't know,
53, 54.
So, they do one every year, and the UFC is just like, no, we're doing one every month, sometimes two.
Yeah.
And we just keep track that way. Like,
Yeah. I was gonna say sorry. Bill Gates wanted me to do a live Windows update right in the middle of the podcast.
Well, he's just a hater, and
Yeah, doesn't he know
that's what the conspiracy theories about Bill Gates.
I mean, we
Trying to
have a
bring
guest.
down this podcast because we're gonna bring his ass to light.
So,
But-
yeah.
No, I was just gonna say we had a comment about the Saudi Golf League guy. When I was talking about Dustin Johnson, I think I might have missed something in between my update there, but yeah,
we were
Dustin,
just talking still UFC.
gotcha. Go ahead.
Yeah,
no,
you,
that was it.
Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson are going. Yeah, I mean that's, it's smart for this other league to try to challenge. I mean if they've got money, but it's going to be interesting to see what the PGA Tour how they respond. I mean, it's kind of like they've been an exclusive club. Like almost the old USFL tried to do with the NFL back in the day. In some ways it can be good when you don't have a monopoly, because then it could force the league to actually improve.
Well, more importantly, I mean, not that I'm a huge golf guy, but I believe they also signed 60 of the top 100 college recruits out of the amateurs as well. So like they gave a ton of money to amateurs as well, and they have. I just read yesterday they have $100 million set aside for legal fees for the PGA. So they said, "Come at us." They didn't mince words, Mike. They just UFC like, let's get it on, big Mike style. They said we got $100 million set aside for legal fees. That's not paying people money. That's legal fees, and that was their starting price. But remember, the PGA also doesn't control a lot of their major contests. So like they have a partnership with the Masters, but the Masters are the ones that send out the invites. So the PGA could be in some real trouble. I don't think people realize how serious this league is in terms of the names we got. Dustin Johnson is a top 15 golfer in the world.
They got Sergio Garcia too.
Yeah, they got Sergio. And the rumor is that they're going to have Bryson by the morning.
Wow. Well, it sounds like that they are still able to play in the, like you said, they are still able to play in the majors. So
until the majors come out with a definitive statement, and that's if they can all agree, which I doubt they'll do. I can't see the Masters saying no to Dustin Johnson. I mean, what do they care? The thing that bothers me is, yeah, I don't agree with a lot of what the Saudi princes do or a lot of their political views. I mean, we can just touch on it if you guys don't want to do a deep dive. But, like, don't act like America is completely innocent in the hands of blood either. And I always make this analogy. It's like if you're a 13-year-old kid or a 16-year-old kid and you go to work at Subway, that doesn't mean that you have all the backlash of the Jared scandal, or you have all the political views of Bill Gates if you're a technician that worked for Windows. It's like we don't always know what our bosses do. At the end of the day, as a father, your main priority is to put food on the table for your kids. And if you're bettering your family and you're giving away good amounts of money, for good, then you do good with the money you get. Like, we can only control our actions for ourselves at some level. And it's just like, at what point do we stop pointing fingers at other people and pointing fingers at ourselves and being like, hey, like, the world's not perfect.
Right. As a fan, there's not really, it's different because, even like talking about football and stuff, you want players to play for your team and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, it's a business,
Right.
And I had a chance to interview Albert Young, former Iowa running back, because I went to Iowa, but he was Minnesota Viking running back, and he played with Brett Favre at the time. And so we were talking about, some of the players now and the financial part of it. And he talked about how he saw it was a business, I mean, he got injured and, yes, it's a game, but it's a business. And as a player, Well, now as a fan, kind of knowing some of the things, it's hard to get upset when a player leaves, for more money. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, you
I
can't
agree
say
with you. I mean,
because you would do that. I mean, yes, there are a lot of other
100%.
factors, but yeah, I mean, you want to
There
provide
is
for
no
your family.
loyalty.
There's not, and yes, I mean, there are players that want to win, and winning is good because that can lead to other things, other sponsorships and stuff, especially maybe when you get later on in your career and stuff. But some of these players, especially running backs, they only have a short shelf life in the NFL. Now when you look at golfers, they have a little bit longer of a shelf life, but with how much it takes to stay at the top level of any sport, let alone golf, it's you kind of get what you can when you can, and if it's a new opportunity, I think now I just think with social media, with everything kind of open up, you look at these things in a different light. It's like you know there are other opportunities, and it's okay to explore them. And it's going to be interesting. Golf does seem to be like kind of one of those sports that is steeped in history and tradition, but also maybe being stuck in the mud, on some things. And so this it's going to be interesting to see how the PGA responds, because if they respond in a completely negative way, I there might be even more of a backlash, with fans and stuff. I can't see fans being angry that these players go play, in the Saudi league. Can you?
Well, let me touch on something else to kind of tie in. You said you're a Vikings fan, right? So
No, I'm actually I
Bears
actually am
fan.
a Bears fan, but
a
yeah,
Bears fan.
Yep.
But you know the division well. What I'm getting at there is like in our division, we had Adrian Peterson. He went through his child abuse thing with how he disciplined his child. It's like you can agree with that, you can disagree, you can be indifferent, but you can still be a Vikings fan, or you can still dislike him as a Bears fan, or as a Lions fan, or even a Packers fan. And like I think the internet and like the transparency of podcasts to go full circle what we've been talking about and the UFC versus boxing. I don't think we have to define ourselves in sports. You can watch boxing and enjoy the UFC. You can watch, Tiger Woods and the PGA and the old school golf and still appreciate the young guys coming up. And yeah, maybe I don't appreciate all what the Saudi princes do on their off time, just like I wouldn't want to know what's going on in my boss's bedroom at all times, and vice versa. But I don't think enough people talk about like there can be a separation between the laundry we cheer for or the events in which we cheer for them, and also having respect in different elements. Like you can be a Chiefs fan, but not like what Tyreek Hill, is all about, or you might like something that somebody does and not be a fan of the team.
Well, to that point, the whole Deshaun Watson thing is going to be interesting this year, because I did talk to when it first broke with the Browns trade, I did talk to John Suchan, and he's a writer for with the Browns, and how there are several people in Cleveland, they're basically saying that they're going to get rid of their season tickets because of Deshaun Watson. And that's going to be an interesting case, because I think,
Story's growing.
It is growing. Yes. I mean,
we've gotten way more information in the last 2 weeks than we did the entire last year.
And that's curious too. So it's hard to, you kind of look at this stuff with a grain of salt, but I mean, you balance, as a fan, do you want your team to win? Yes. And then, do you want them to be moral? Well, when you look at most of these players, I mean, if you really dug into, some things, and all of us have, some things that no one's perfect. So, but obviously, if Deshaun Watson is proven guilty on some things, yes, there needs to be punishment. It'll be interesting to see kind of how Roger Goodell approaches that, but then also how the Browns fans approach that, because yes, they're starved for a winner. If he goes ahead and gets them to a Super Bowl or wins it, everything, I think the narrative changes.
Well, and I think the narrative should change. You talk about interviewing a lot of writers. I think there's a reason writers write with pencils, pens. There's also erasers on the other end of that. We're allowed to change our opinions as facts come out, and that's what this podcast is about.
Mhm.
To go full circle again. That's what we talked about early in this podcast about teaching your kids, lessons and like learning from experiences. And I think if we don't do that as sports fans as well, and we don't like we can not like what Deshaun Watson did in this moment, and then wake up, next Tuesday with more information, either more this way or more this way, and change our opinion based on that. I don't think people understand that opinions and emotions are supposed to be a moving scale. We're not supposed to stay stagnant in one belief, and that's kind of what this podcast has been about. And like you say, that's what pushes us different than a big ESPN or Fox broadcast. Is that not only do they have to stay so buttoned up and powder their noses and wear suits and ties, but they only have 10, 15 minutes sometimes on a segment. If you want to go 15 minutes on golf or start talking about tennis, you're welcome to on my podcast at any time. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah,
So
I think, or I was just gonna say with Deshaun Watson, I know I told Logan like, yeah, I was reserving judgment. Didn't seem like there was a lot of information other than he had 22 accusers, which I know is a lot of accusers, but I was just like, hang on, maybe it's a money grab thing, and I was just reserving judgment. And now that I've heard more information, specifically, and I could have, I guess, probably maybe looked it up. I don't know if the information had been public yet. I feel like ESPN would have gladly reported it if it had been public. So maybe it has just become public, more of it. But I am definitely changing my opinion on what it sounds like happened. What I had thought maybe had happened, and I don't want to say too much because I still don't know exactly what happened. There's 3 sides to every story.
I think there's
But
66 sides now too.
Probably more, maybe like
yeah,
9.
Okay.
but,
So are you, Mike? What team are you a fan of?
I'm Giants for football, Devils hockey, Mets basketball. I don't have a dog in the fight. I grew up rooting for too many teams, and I just decided I I'll root for whoever I like that year, and it's not a front runner thing. It's not like I try and just join that bandwagon. I'm just like, who do I want to win this year? Like, who deserves a title? Like, I would have been happy with Jimmy Butler or somebody like that, and I'm not mad. If I kind of want the not the Celtics, the Warriors to win this one for Curry to just really solidify, how awesome a player he's been. And I know it's already to say, he needs to solidify his career. It's like he's had a phenomenal career. It's already solidified, but just even more so. So, and I also feel like this might be their last chance
Could be.
to get one more. Whereas the Celtics, they're really young. They're going to be really good for a long time.
Well, yeah, I guess
And
so.
you never know, but
So I'd ask that. I mean, obviously with the Giants, they've won a Super Bowl, but Logan, you said you're a Lions fan.
Yeah, I'm a Lions football fan, a Lakers basketball fan.
So yeah, with the Lions, they haven't won a Super Bowl, right? They haven't even been to one, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, hypothetically, if Deshaun Watson had wanted to go to Detroit and then would you, and then kind of looking forward then to say, okay, well, he would bring Detroit a Super Bowl. Would it be worth it to bring all of this that he has, going on?
I don't think so. Is you'll know about me as we start to network more. I'm more about the long term of things, and I think the long term of things eventually he's going to spill the crude oil all over your rig of operation, and eventually it just takes a match at that point, and then the flames go up. It's similar to what the Browns tried to do with Odell and Baker and bring in all these guys, and they brought all these names, but they didn't mix. And I think it's more important to mix and match the right way, and that's why it's okay to try things, even as a Packers. They got rid of Adams because they're trying something completely new. It's better to try something completely new or completely different, in my opinion, than to try to plug in somebody who already thinks one way or the other. I don't think Watson can be molded to think differently. I think he already thinks he's a top guy. So maybe he could go to an established organization like the Patriots and be successful. But I think when you're talking about building a culture and you have to restart, like you're the Jets or you're the Browns or you're the Lions, I think you're better off going younger, or with a guy like a Drew Brees or even a Jared Goff who has a chip on their shoulder and is ready to prove something. I think Watson already thinks he's at the level, and he might be. And so I feel like he fits more of a career kind of established team like the Patriots.
Well, it'll be interesting too, because then Mike, would you rather have Daniel Jones and lose and get the number 1 pick, or Deshaun Watson and be in that conversation of playoffs and Super Bowl?
If you had asked me this, even a month ago, I'd probably have really had to think about it. But now I'd say Daniel Jones, because now that there's even more coming out, I really am just like, and I've always been a fan of Deshaun Watson, so that's partially why I think just like when I bet a fight, I have that. And I know my biases, so I try and still keep a level head, and I'm just like, I don't know, give him the benefit of the doubt. This is, something might not be all right here, but I don't know. I just think definitely I'll take one more year of Daniel Jones, see what we got. We got a new coach who can use Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones had some wheels. I don't know if you guys know this, but Daniel Jones can run.
He can, but he needs more new cleats.
Sometimes the grass trips him up.
Doesn't he have a flat tire at times?
Huh?
He's got a flat tire sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes the turf monster, the 20-yard line will just trip him up and pull him down. But he's deceptively fast, and that's it.
I've always been a Jones fan. I really have. I actually like Jordan more than Watson, straight up, even without the allegations.
I'm not saying that.
Wow.
I am still. I was shocked when we took Daniel Jones at 6. I was like, why didn't we trade back? And then you hear Gettleman just say there's no way he was going to be there at 15 like you guys are thinking. He's like, I know way more than you guys, and it's just like, all right, it's a great line for the GM. I'll trust you. But then the more I've seen for 3 years, I'm like, he's kind of what we probably thought he was. He's not bad. He needs a great offensive line, which we didn't have, and a great coach, which we haven't given him. So, but maybe now we're there.
Here, I'll ask you guys a question.
I don't know.
As I might have to.
I'm happy to see what happens, and then hey, if we suck again, another top 5 pick.
I might have to mute myself as I'm getting a coughing fit here, so I'll ask you this question quickly. But at what point can you think of a good quarterback that led a bad offense? So, I don't think we underestimate that a lot. I think we think there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but really you need a good wide receiver. You need a good offensive line. You need a good running back. There's not too many teams that actually have a good quarterback, but terrible offenses. I think we overrate quarterbacks. I really do.
It's absolutely true. You can't survive with a bad offensive line. It's just simply put. with health or just productivity. But either way, you're going to be, if you have a shitty offensive line for 3 years and you're that quarterback for 3 years, maybe they'll realize that they didn't give you any help, but more than likely they'll just be like, we need a more mobile quarterback.
Well, that obviously with Joe Burrow, and it really helped that he had Jamar Chase. Obviously, their offensive line was terrible, but yeah, I mean that's the only thing. I mean, when you have
that's true,
but when you have a generational wide receiver like that, and Joe Burrow has that too. Yeah, I mean that's a great question as far as so how was that phrased? Like a good quarterback that led a bad offense,
a bad offensive line.
What I'm saying,
maybe you did say bad offense.
We always talk about how a good quarterback can overcome a bad offense, but it's like, no, they really can't. If you think about it, all the good quarterbacks have good offenses.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and Aaron Rodgers was a guy who did.
Adams, it wasn't like he did it with nothing.
But Aaron Rodgers only has that one title, and is it because? And it's not always that he didn't have a good offensive line. It would just be his offensive line would have injuries.
But he had Adams
too. But when you don't have the protection, even a guy who's mobile, like when you're just getting hit, or look at Tom. The whole reason the Giants won 2 Super Bowls against Tom Brady was because we got pressure on him, and same with the Eagles when they got their Super Bowl against Tom Brady. The only times Tom Brady lost in the Super Bowl was when he, was just constantly getting hit. It's not just sacks, it's just those pressures and just constantly being. He's always good at getting rid of the ball quick, but it was if you don't have time to throw, it messes up all your rhythm, your receivers' timing.
It makes a difference. Yeah,
it's a huge, huge key to the game that definitely, I know when I was a kid, really paid no attention to offensive line. Like, not that I know some of the guys' names at least on the Giants, but and the really good guys around the league, but not.
Let's face it, the offensive line's like seasoning for food. We don't think about it until you don't have any salt and pepper in the cupboard, and you're like, oh wait, this food kind of tastes bland without these pieces. I mean, we saw it years ago with Patrick Mahomes. As much as people want to say he's one of the better quarterbacks, without that offensive line, he didn't do much. And people want to say, well, Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks. Well, he had Adams. Burrow had Chase. It's what I was talking about with my friend Ryan, who we brought on a couple weeks ago. It's like, you can say quarterback's the most valuable, and that might be true, but all those good quarterbacks, just like the bad quarterbacks, have to have an offense. And I think that's an underrated thing that the mainstream media hasn't hit on enough. It's the sum of the parts. We always talk about the sum of the parts in baseball when it comes to shifts or like outfield or like even DH positions. I think that's what makes baseball so cool is there's actually a position that's just designated hitting. It creates another strategist. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that in a sport like football that's so team-oriented. It's like it also comes down to that individual dog too,
You talk about just like comparisons in multiple sports. I mean, so you brought up a good quarterback that leads a bad offense. It's almost like if it's a good quarterback, something will happen. Something, I mean, because or they're not going to stay around long. They just proven that they're not very good. You go to it's so interesting. Like even in the NBA or different, where you have like a coach that they say is maybe the greatest coach of all time, and Phil Jackson, and I would say he probably is because he was good at motivating mega stars, Jordan, Pippen, Shaq, and so he was the elite to able to kind of unlock the talent. So you have that, and he was great because he was able to do that. But then you have some of these other coaches who have won titles, and they're good
Be right back.
or great once they actually step up and win something. The Bucks, Giannis won and everything, right?
Right.
And now Budenholzer, and so once a player wins something, you almost, they become great or good or better, and you give them more of the benefit of the doubt. Like going back, you were talking about the Chiefs, and I'm actually going to be interviewing a Chiefs podcast you hear pretty soon. I was supposed to last week, it didn't work out, but I'm actually picking them to be last in the division, and I'm going to give her an opportunity to kind of go at me with that. But because I really think, Patrick Mahomes he's an amazing talent. He's able to extend plays, everything. But I think that loss of Tyreek Hill is going to be huge. What do you think?
Well, not just that, but it's the sum of the parts. We talked about you being a father early in the podcast, and I like to bring things full circle. I'm very symbiotic in the way I cover sports. I mean, that's kind of the uniqueness of this podcast. Is I like sports stories that intertwine with family, with values, with emotion, because I think people forget these players are people. Like Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill went to dinner. They knew each other's girlfriends, wives, families and stuff like that. And so, like, to tie it back to my point is, if someone said, "Are you a good father?" then it relates back to, is your son good, and then is he good to you? Are you good to him? And it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Like what he does outside of the house is a reflection on you, and vice versa. What you do to get money to provide for your family is a reflection on your family. It all kind of connects, right? And so, like, him losing Tyreek Hill, he is a different quarterback. He is a different quarterback now, forever. It's like a tattoo. It's not going to go away. He can get it replaced. It can become scar tissue. Maybe they get together in 5 more years. Maybe they get together in a Hall of Fame speech. But their relationship is different. It's not that they won't look back fondly. Maybe he's a better quarterback. Kelvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford broke up, and it made Matthew Stafford a different quarterback. Now, when Stafford retires and Kelvin's done selling his marijuana, maybe they'll look back at the storylines differently than they do now. But the truth is, they're different players because of that happened. And it's like, in those moments where you're separated from your son, or and then you're together, the relationship changes, right? And so, like, I don't think enough people pay attention not only to, like, the big roster transitions, like you mentioned, Hill leaving. What if Travis Kelce gets hurt for 4 weeks? That changes. But like we talk about it in our fantasy football leagues, like, oh, this is why you should play best ball over daily fantasy or day. But it all matters. Like, if Tyreek Hill falls and sprains his toe in training camp, it's going to affect Tua in their growth. And then that might affect the way Patrick Mahomes reacts, because he's got to check on his friend on Twitter. I just don't think enough people talk about these type of things and from a human perspective and how it affects things. So it's like, or like you mentioned, you thought the Chiefs would finish last. Maybe it's because Adams is joining his best friend in Derek Carr, and maybe that's not the main storyline. Maybe that's what the media wants you to think is, hey, Derek Carr has his best friend, therefore Adams and him are going to have a great year. But truly, they're going to double team Adams, and guess what? Waller's wide open. And so Waller has the big fantasy year, but really it's Adams' production that leads to Waller having a good year. They talk about this a lot with the Lions. Like Hawkinson's been a disappointment, quote unquote disappointment. Maybe it's because we haven't had a field stretcher. So we drafted Williams, the field stretcher. Maybe he doesn't go out and get 1,000 yards, but he runs a Will Fuller like route tree, and so it opens up T.J. Hawkinson to have that 1,000-yard receiving year. And so that now it looked like Hawkinson had a good year, but really it's the sum of the parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the Lions example too. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting now. How it will Jamison Williams, how that will open up, things for uh, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I think what I heard even talking about the Chiefs when Tyreek Hill was added, that added then Travis Kelce ended up having one of the best years. So you're right, it is all connected that way, and you have to look at that, and you have to take that into account when you're obviously choosing your fantasy teams, but even looking at how well they're going to do from week to week and even season to season, and it'll be interesting to see, because that's going to be a tough division anyway. But when you look at the Chiefs, or even here living here in Wisconsin, being a Bears fan, you keep hearing about the Packers and like, oh, they're not going to miss Adams, they're not going to, oh, we've got this and that, and I'm like, they're totally going to miss, and they still may do well, right?
Yeah.
And you
It's
have
going to be a different offense.
it is, and now Rodgers is there for the mandatory stuff, but he skipped the other stuff, and that's going to be tough because he has been known to take a long time to trust wide receivers. It's so much so that even in that playoff game, that's what bit them in the butt, versus the Niners, is he was forcing everything in to Devontae and not trusting the other receivers, and and he had one of his worst games because of that, just trying to force things. So yes, it's easy if it's your team to want to look at the positives and say, yes, well, now Devontae's there, he won't have to force it, and to Devontae, he'll spread it around, and yes, he will have to spread it around, but when the chips are down in the playoffs, who's he going to go to? And obviously it's going to be a long season, but it was a long season last year, and it was just Devontae. He hadn't, trusted the other wide receivers, and so I think some Packer fans are definitely in for a rude awakening, and I just kind of keep my mouth shut as a Bears fan, and because I know the Bears are going to be terrible, and you can't hurt me with that. I just know they're going to be terrible. They've got a new coach, so I'm good with that. I
heard some analysts say, it was a ESPN radio guy, but he said all the Bears moves look like they're trying to tank for this season. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't think they're trying to tank, but it was a mess. They didn't have an assistant general. They didn't even have assistant general manager. They just didn't have everything. And there's so many players, that they're so many pieces that they're away from, really building. And so, and they're going to have a ton of dead cap money, either just in the quarterback position that's not even either on the team or going to be starting. So there's a lot there, and it's a long rebuild. And I think,
Right.
it's so easy to be a fan of a team and want your team to win. But when you look at it and you're honest, it's okay to be honest and say, okay, well, this is a rebuild.
Yeah.
And if you have a quarterback, that you can trust, that's young, and I'm optimistic, I
like Justin Fields.
I do, and I have to be optimistic, right?
I like him more than I like him coming out of the draft way more than I like Daniel Jones. Like, if I were you, I'd be like that draft day. I would have been ecstatic. Even from what I've seen, I'd still be ecstatic.
And yeah, there's a lot that he needs to grow on, but he showed a lot of positive things. And now in a new offense, they could surprise some people this year. If they don't, I'm okay with that, because I know they need a lot of draft capital. They've given so much away for just
Justin Fields.
Well, not only that, but even Mitch Trubisky, and just the misevaluating, maybe even Cole Kmet. We'll see if he's even that good in that offense, because they brought in all these other tight ends as well. So there's a lot that offense needs. Offensive line is going to be huge, but next year, 2023, they're going to have more in the cap. presumably going to have a higher draft pick, and I'm okay with that. When you look at the Packers, they took Aaron Rodgers kind of like has taken them hostage, because now when you look at the Packers, they can't draft a quarterback in 2023, right? If they do, they're basically telling him they don't want him anymore.
Well, they still have Jordan Love, right?
He's gonna.
I don't think he's great, but I'm just saying they already did that to him once, and I think missed.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like his deal will probably be done by the time Rodgers is done playing. So we'll see if Rodgers lasts 2 or 3 years. I'm saying maybe 2 more years this year and next year for Rodgers, then he's done. But they really can't, draft his successor unless they're telling him they don't want him anymore, because he's proven that he can't be on the roster, so their long term it's going to be interesting. Obviously you look at the young players they did on defense, that'll be good for them, but we'll see.
So let me ask you this question this way. I promise it'll make sense when I get to the point. But if I said to you, here's some Tylenol, you're going to need it at some point, do you take it right away? No, you would wait till you have a headache, right? And so
that's what I was going to answer. I didn't know it was a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
I was actually going to answer once I put my drink down, but I was like, that was it.
That's the point.
I would be like, no, I'll wait till I get the headache.
But that's the point Jim Caldwell would always make. And it's like the one thing I really agree with Jim Caldwell when he coached the Lions. He said, no matter if your team's rebuilding or if they're a Super Bowl team, never view your season. And I would especially probably agree with the extra game, now that we got 17. Never view your season 1 through 17. Always view it in 4-game blocks. So, like all these Bears fans being like, oh, well, we're going to rebuild. Or I know there's Lions fans like, well, we're not in the bottom of the basement now. That's down to the Bears because they got a shitty offensive line. It's like, yeah, on paper, Aaron Rodgers is going to play all 17 games, but he might get that headache at any point. And guess what? There'll be no Excedrin in the medicine cabinet. And he misses 10 weeks, and it changes that whole division. So, like, there are things that are going to happen within the season that are going to change those 4 wheels. And when those 4 wheels need to be rotated, that could change the whole direction of your vehicle. And so I feel like as a fan, we do this where it's like, oh, we're either rebuilding or we're a championship team. But what if you're both? What if you're doing both? And it's like, that's the thing I get a lot of hate for, because I'm like, I'm a big fan of Fields. And everyone's like, yeah, but you're a Lions fan. How dare you cheer for Fields? It's like,
I like Jalen Hurts. He's an Eagle.
Well, yeah, but Mike, even still, like, so you cheer for Jalen Hurts. That raises the game of Daniel Jones. That raises the expectations that you have for the Giants. That's what we should do. That's what we want out of our prize fighters. We want them to get the biggest prize. We want them to have that main event moment. Like, we want our teams to rise to the moment, not fall to the moment. Like, so I never like it when people are like, oh, yeah, we're rebuilding. In fact, Brad Holmes never used the word rebuild for the Lions. He always said retooling. We're filling up the toolbox.
Well, yeah, and I think that's all right when you have a solid, organization, structure, foundation. The Bears never had that. They had, basically a money guy, Ted Phillips, within the organization, and they just didn't have, strong voice, with Ryan Pace, and in the draft when they drafted Trubisky, they traded up, and he was asking in the draft room, he was asking around. You had him number 1 quarterback, right? You had him he was asking people in his draft room, to validate his choice, so that, it's been, as a Bears fan, it's been hard to trust the ownership to choose the right people. And now, now they've got football guys. They've got, Ryan Poles, who, played offensive line,
Right.
at Boston College. And he did a smart thing by bringing in an assistant GM from Philadelphia, I believe. And so, like, actually having a foundation there to trust and be like, yes, okay, they are retooling, when a team does something positive, it's easy to kind of trust and be like, okay, yes, they're retooling. But when you have to rebuild the whole foundation, and when you have just what they had, from the get-go last season with, even the season before with Matt Nagy, and just he had to pull himself from being he was pulled, from being offensive coordinator, calling the plays, 2 years in a row. It just, it was a mess. And so, yeah, I totally get where not wanting to say rebuilding, but if it's terrible all around, then I'm
Right.
okay with that as a fan, as long as it leads to something, as long as there's like hope in something. And the quarterback, as you guys know, is the most important position on a franchise, right?
Right. Sure.
One singular position. I agree, absolutely. I think it's obvious.
I mean,
they have the ball in their hands every play.
And there's some teams, some coaches that can mask that quarterback, but it really takes like a generational defense or something to do
Right.
that.
For Trent Dilfer to win a Super Bowl.
Brad Johnson also, right? With
Colin Kaepernick got there.
The Trent Dilfer one hurts me because he won 35-7 against the Giants.
Good old Kerry Collins.
Hey, the Giants have
Who won 41-0 in the NFC Championship game, which blows my mind.
Didn't they have a
I don't know how they beat the Vikings
at that
let
time?
Alone 41-0. I don't know how they beat the Vikings that year with Kerry Collins at quarterback. That guy was terrible. I think he led the league in fumbles, if not that year, the next year.
I could talk to you all night, but I wanted to do some rapid fire because I always find rapid fire to be some interesting, and you get some interesting takes that way. But what's the biggest storyline that the mainstream media is missing? Because you talk to a lot of these. I want you to plug it as much as you want, man. I think it's pretty awesome. You talk to all these guys. You're not afraid, as a smaller podcast like ourselves, to reach out to a lot of these people and get interviews, and you snag some big fishes. What's the couple storylines that you think are going under the radar? The mainstream media is either afraid to talk about or just not giving enough time to. And you can go any sport, anywhere you want to go here. What's on your mind? What sports stories aren't getting enough pub?
Oh, that is a great question. I'm going to have to say number one, because you're not hearing much at all about it, the Alvin Kamara stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And I talked to several of the podcasters, people heavily networked in the city, NOLA Girl, heavily networked in the city with, people all over, and no one knows kind of what's going on. And so that's an interesting, almost Deshaun Watson's kind of taken everything, but that was pretty egregious, what happened there too, so and that keeps getting pushed out as far as, a timeline, for everything as well. So that's one, and we'll go with the Saints too. On that, the whole Jameis Winston, I think just how much he's a weird dude, but how much he has really just kind of ingrained himself in New Orleans, and he is kind of really he fits in what they're doing, and I think he can really do some things with that team and with that defense. They were one game away, almost to the playoffs with. It was a record number of players that the team had to use. Quarterbacks, they were down to Ian Book. So the Saints are going to be an interesting case.
What about Michael Thomas as well?
So Michael Thomas as well, and I didn't realize this as well.
They drafted Olave.
Olave is going to be interesting. I didn't realize, Michael Thomas, when he was there and got the record with Drew Brees, they called him like, was it like this slant king or right? Slant boy. That's what, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
And I guess I didn't realize that, but it'll be interesting to see, how the offense is going, because Olave is going to be a nice addition there. And when you get Jameis, he likes to throw the deep ball. And yes, Drew Brees is a name, but when you think of Jameis Winston and all the talent, and if he stays healthy, that could be a really potent offense, all around. And they really have a chance, I think, to get through the NFC playoffs. I mean, there's really, when you look at the NFC, there's no really dominant team. I mean, you got names, right? Everyone's picking the Bucks because of Tom Brady, or the Packers because of Aaron Rodgers, so people are picking these teams because of one player, one name, or the Rams because they've done it before, but there's always the hangover. I mean, they're at, so I think the Saints, they're definitely a team that not many people are talking about. That it could really make some noise in the NFC.
Now, I want to mention that as well, because I've heard a lot of good stuff on the Saints, and we talked before the podcast about DFS and betting. I think the Saints are a good bet for their over. In fact, people would call Michael Thomas slant boy kind of derogatory, on Twitter and things, and he was starting to take it personal, and people were like, well, I wonder if that's why he's not so motivated to come back. And then Jarvis Landry comes in late, and he's like, he almost took, I remember saying, quote, he kind of tucked it under his wing to be like, you know what, Michael, I'm Grandpa Slot, like they want to call you slant boy, I'm slant man. I've been doing this before, So he basically turned this idea of being a slant boy into this like negative thing, into a positive thing, saying, hey, I'm still getting paid. I'm Jarvis Landry. I'm much older than you, and I made a career out of running slants. There's nothing wrong with slants. And I think it actually fits Jameis better, because maybe he's not throwing so many interceptions and throwing deep. I like that Saints call a lot. What do you think about that, though, as a man? And I don't want to keep it too long, but like we were talking about this, me and Mike, off air. It's like he's like, well, with this Winston stuff, I kind of felt this way, but then it changed. I'm like, it's okay to have reasonable doubt, or like withhold judgment until facts come out. So like, I want to be respectful of Kamara's personal life, but at the same time, it doesn't look good. Like he might be completely innocent. Quentin Cephas, for when the Lions drafted him, he got wrongly accused. On the opposite, he got accused of something he didn't do, and it cost him a lot of money in the draft. So
it's honestly been so long and so quiet. I remember it was something really bad, and I was shocked at the news when I heard it, that Kamara had this. I don't remember what it was, honestly, though. So can either of you remind me? For any of our listeners who are unfamiliar with what the actual allegations or accusations are, again, all alleged. We're not accusing him that it actually definitively happened. It's just what was the story, because we haven't touched on actually what the story was.
I'll let you go ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, I could look specifically here about it, but basically, what it was with his.
Briefly, you don't have to give all the details. Was it domestic violence? I think, right?
No, so okay, here it was. He was arrested in Las Vegas on felony battery charges. Basically, there's a video of the assault that was captured on camera, and see, Kamara shoved a man near an elevator, and then four men, including Kamara, beat him down. And
okay.
Yes, right. And so, and the really weird thing is that he was allowed to play in the Pro Bowl. It was just such a weird thing.
Right. I remember that.
And they beat him pretty bad. And so,
now it's coming back. Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, may get swept under the rug. I'm sure there's probably be some payments and things like that, so it's not, I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see. I'm sure he'll be suspended a couple of games. In when you look at that Saints, fantasy wise too, it'll be interesting to see how they use. I can't think of him now. Who's the other quarterback? Number 7. Taysom Hill. Do they use him as a running back? They'll have Mark Ingram, but they do use him a little bit in some different ways.
Yeah.
If Kamara is out or not, and but you look at that has to be. I mean, I think it is probably the best wide receiver core the Saints have ever had. I mean, it's probably one of the.
I really like Olave. I think
it's probably
would be great.
It's probably one of the best in the league. I mean, it would be interesting to see kind of a ranking of all the different wide receivers groups in the NFL. I mean, that's definitely has to be up there.
I'm a big fan of Allen too. I'm really glad he got a chance. I think defensive coordinators have kind of got the bad name because offenses have been kind of more fun to watch right now. But I do think it's kind of cool that these defensive coordinators are getting more shine now. You see it with the Saints, the Bucks now that Arians stepped down as well. Giving it a defensive guy under the radar chance. I just think good coaches come from both sides. I don't think we always talk about sports being a copycat league, but I think there's other ways to make a photocopy. I don't think there's only one way. It's not like we got to pick apart Andy Reid's coaching tree or Sean McVay's coaching tree is the only tree that has fruit on it. There's different fruits for different offenses and stuff of that nature. So again, I don't want to hold you, but man, if you're enjoying this, we can keep going too. Is there anything you want to ask us? Because a lot of times we don't always get the guests on, so it's kind of interesting to get some different perspectives or different questions out there as well.
If not, I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Bears, Packers.
Yeah.
So going back to the Bears and Packers conversations we were having. So one with the Bears. And again, because I wasn't really paying attention to, I just take in what I hear during the off season. I don't seek it out, I guess. So when I heard that this guy was saying, it seems to me like the Bears are tanking. Like all their moves are showing they're tanking. And then what I then heard was I knew that they traded Allen Robinson to the Rams, right?
He's just free agent.
Free agent, yeah.
Oh, okay. But how about Khalil Mack? They traded him to the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did they get back for him was going to be my question.
Oh, I'd have to let me look that up.
All right. Well, all right. I don't want to put you on the spot then. All right.
No.
Next question.
Well, no. Let me speak to that a little bit though. So I mean, specifically, what the previous GM had done is he, rolled the dice on a lot of people, and just chose the talent wrong, and then also signed a bunch of big money free agents.
Never good.
Never good if they're not the right fit. So if you're not a good talent evaluator, like Nick Foles,
you have to be very selective. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you throw a ton of money at some of these players and you miss really badly. And that's the problem. They missed really badly on some of these and they got a lot of good a few years out of Khalil Mack. And so it was time because he was injured, and it was time because the Bears were not going to be a winner this year. And so they needed to get some draft capital to try to build it the right way. And so that's why, they traded, Khalil Mack to get that and the players that they needed. And so that was a good thing. When you look at them tanking, so, they could have tried to get, was it Teron Armstead, offensive line, because that was huge, to shore up their offensive line to try to get a big name person. But why throw a ton of money, at
not right now
when the team's not ready to win? It's like
exactly.
Yes,
that's
you want to spread it around. Yes, and then hopefully in 2023 they're going to have more money to be able to get all the pieces plus maybe a better draft pick, and then you have another year of Justin Fields. within this new offense kind of ready. So I don't see them if they were really tanking, then they would have traded Justin Fields. They're on an upward trajectory.
Right. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, they got a second. They got a second this year and a sixth next year.
Yeah, I see Gov. Alan got us. Just Alan's still listening. So if we need something to be looked up, we'll just tell Gov, be like, what are we looking up? What do we need?
So that was the thing too.
He's our producer for the show tonight.
Nice. Well, that's some things like people complain that. Well,
yeah. Thank you, Gov.
Well, that's like I think people are complaining that they should have gotten more in a trade for Mac. But here's the thing.
But see that he only got a second. But he's old. He's getting up there now. He's past that 30 threshold, right? Well, he's over 30, right?
Well, so here's the thing too. So with that, it's like when someone holds a garage sale, right? You hold a garage sale at your house. You've got you're attached to some of the things that you're selling. So you're going to value them more than someone else coming in. Someone coming in is going to be like, nope, I want to pay $1. What? I have $5, $10 on that. Well, do you want to get rid of it or not? Right. And at this time, the Bears needed to get rid of Mac to start the retooling, rebuilding, whatever it was, right, to get more draft picks. And so you get what you can get. And really, they got a good value. They took some swings with him. Didn't quite work out. He was, not long-term plan for them. And you get some more money off the books for 2023 and beyond that just we're not going to be able to afford.
That's true. And then when you're right.
Great question.
I agree with what you were saying though. When you want to spend money in free agency, it's when you've, like the Bears are doing, get rid of your excess cap. Your Khalil Mack is not going to help you win right now. It's not going to help you win next year. The team's a long way away. So save that money, save that cap space for when you draft right. You've got a lot of young guys on small contracts, and then you add that one piece. You add that one wide receiver, you trade for him, whatever, like the Eagles are doing. Like you got to have you got your quarterback on your first round deal. So when I said tanking, I was again repeating something I had heard on some radio station, but I thought about it. I'm like, well, all right, I get it. Tanking may not be the right word. Retooling could be the same thing in a, with the right spin. But they're maybe they are ready to win. Who knows? Like, I don't know if all these guys aren't good. Like they might be. Maybe they did nail every pick in the draft and whatnot. And I do think Justin Fields is the right guy. So again, I don't know anything about their offensive line, and I'm not trying to say like I do, but
nobody saw Tom Brady coming before Tom Brady.
Hey, well, yeah, I do think Justin Fields is legit. Like if you watched him at Ohio State, the guy's toughness alone is enough to make you love him. Like he played that entire playoff game. If not, I forget if he played in the final. He played in the final too with like broken ribs or what. He took a crazy shot in the ribs.
It was against Clemson. Yep.
Yeah, and then he played the following game. He won. He came back. He took the shot in the ribs, won that game. Like I thought it was going to knock him out of the game. It seemed that bad. And then he came back, finished the game, won the game, and then played the following week, still obviously having some injury. Maybe it healed somewhat, but probably not that much. And
No, you'd also talked about tanking and the wide receivers kind of getting rid of Robinson. Part of a good thing getting rid of I can't even say it. Getting
I
rid
never
of
liked Robinson that much.
well,
I
I
love
never drafted him in fantasy.
right, and I didn't either. But he pretty much he pretty much quit on the team a little bit this year. He just did not mesh well with Fields because Fields was used to he did well with Darnell Mooney because Mooney
Mooney's
was able
great.
to get open.
Fast.
But Robinson gets open as well, but it's what's called NFL open, right? And Fields wasn't used to that, and so they didn't really mesh well. They didn't have a chance in the preseason to really get a lot of time. But for whatever reason, Robinson just kind of quit on the team as well, and so it was time for him to go. I wish him all the best kind of going forward. We'll see. I think he'll probably do good with the Rams. But yes, I do see the Bears picking up a wide receiver next year, maybe even the draft again. I think Velus Jones is going to be a good kind of piece as well. But they do need a bigger, taller wide receiver one. Mooney, I think, has a chip on his shoulder, but they're definitely going to need another wide receiver next year in the draft, and maybe even sign one. We'll see who's available, but you don't want to reach for a player just because you have the money. You want to have the right player. I mean, it's like I'm a Bulls fan, and back in the day, when the Bulls had all this money, free agency, and they signed Carlos Boozer. No thanks.
I feel like, man, here's what happened, man. I had heard you were a good guy, and then I invited you to my slumber party, like my birthday party. I was 13 years old, and then we stayed up until midnight, and really getting on it. And we were supposed to be sleeping halfway through the night, but then we just stayed up all night in our sleeping bag talking about sports. That's kind of what I felt like. It's been great.
Yeah.
Now, but one thing I wanted, it hit me in the middle of the night, and it woke me up, and I thought, man, I got to talk to somebody about this. I have to bring this topic up. If I gave you $20 million and I said you had to put it into your favorite sports team, so in this case we learned it's the Bears, right? So I give you $20 million, we have to do something unorthodox to help your team. What do you do? Because we hear it all the time in football, it's the analytics movement, or they're going to steal this from college, or we're going to try Urban Meyer, this college coach. What's the one thing that you would do, whether it might be a new training regimen that you think would work, whether it be like bring in Jay Glazer to teach you guys MMA? Like, if I gave you $30 million to invest in some kind of new Tom Brady-like movement, what's the thing that you think is going to be the future of the NFL? You would want to get the jump start on?
I would not tell everyone to go vegan like Chris Paul.
That's
probably not a wise move.
That is
no offense to the vegans out there, but doesn't seem to be.
Well, I actually got to answer
levels.
if I'll give you some time to think about it. The number one thing I would do, and this is completely honest, is I would hire fantasy football guys, because I feel like a lot of the fantasy football guys have put in the time and the effort to be really good guys like that. Maybe not even they cover like fantasy football exclusively, but guys like PFF Eric Eager, for example. Guys in PFF, Mike Renner, I think does really good work with PFF for the draft. Like thinking outside the box, hiring, I don't know if you know, but a guy like Pat Mayo, who does like a lot of entertainment stuff, and just like loosening up the guys and like bringing in more of the sports and the fantasy guys. I think fantasy gets this idea that like, oh, it's just this carnival or kids play it. But there's a lot of guys in fantasy football right now that put in a lot of time and like really Rich Rebarb does a lot of work, stuff like that. I would hire a lot more of those guys in my organization.
I'd say, yeah, that's an interesting point, but you want to, Mike's got something to say?
No, I just was trying to point to Govs.
Comment?
Sorry, I was trying. I got fascinated with my thing, but Gov's making some posts. We'll get back. We'll get to Gov. Finish your point, but let's not forget about Gov's questions. That's all I was trying to say. I was trying to get Logan's attention.
Oh, Deontay, McLaren. Well, yeah. Do you want to do the questions first?
No. Well, you can finish your point first, and then we'll get to the questions.
So I would say I like that, Logan. I like that idea. You want it to be the right person, right? You know, like the Raiders tried that with Mike Mayock, and it was failure. But part of it was the coach that they had, and that just structure wise, So I guess one of my favorite guys is Field Yates. I really like kind of what he does, because you want someone who is obviously good on camera, but then also does all the analytics stuff too. I mean, someone that actually is not just a personality. And you go with the Raiders, Mayock, and they went with personalities. Not just not the people that actually do the work. So I think that's a great idea. With the Bears, it's definitely going to help once they get their new stadium. I think more money is going to come into the franchise and all that, and they're building that. It'll be I think it'll be a lot more exciting. When you look at Soldier Field, it's kind of a dump right now and not in a very good site. So it'll be interesting when they kind of get that all set. But as far as wide receivers for the Bears, if they're able, I'd have to look at Terry McLaurin. That's a great question, because I think how is Terry Metcalf?
Terry McLaurin's pretty good, although I'd probably take Metcalf.
Yeah, I give him
Deontay. They're all really good, actually. Like Deontay Johnson has put up some of the best numbers, fantasy wise.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, fantasy wise correlates to on-field production. So,
I would take Johnson.
What is DK?
How old is DK?
Oh, they're all young.
So
all these guys are first contract guys, I think. Pretty sure.
What I would look, yes, they're all good, right? And what I would look is for the one that is the taller one, because you can look at all the receivers and say they're all good, but fit wise, offense, the Bears need someone who is that tall guy. And obviously DK Metcalf, he would be, he's
6'4".
6'4".
The others are like 6'3", 6'2" ish.
He chose not to show up for OTAs, by the way.
Okay. Oh, so that's an interesting story. I mean, McLaurin is only 6 foot, so he would he's almost too close to what Mooney brings to the table. And Deontay Johnson, I don't see him leaving. And he's the guy there. He's going to be the number one guy there. Deontay Johnson. He is.
He's only all those receivers, by the way. I think that offense is going to be surprisingly good.
Deontay Johnson's only 5'10".
Wow. Okay.
So I would go with DK on that.
I'm pretty sure DK is definitely 6'4", though, right?
Yeah, the internet never lies. So
okay.
And I don't know if you guys.
I'm glad you checked it. I was just going off I feel like Deontay plays bigger than his. Both of them do. Deontay and Terry McLaurin, for being so small. Like they make some jump ball catches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you
they
guys
definitely got some hops.
But Harris has really transformed his body. He basically said he didn't want to end up like Saquon Barkley. So they're saying like he put on like 2 inches of mass on his calves. Like if you looked at his calves from the start of last year to the start of this year, it's like a Nikola Jokic like transformation, like what Jokic did with his body. I mean, the man's calves are the size of a tooth right now. Like it's kind of bizarre how he transforms his body. And I think that's an underrated portion of the new generation. We talked about this man's kids and like what's going to happen with the new generation. I just think these younger, more experienced athletes are taking better care of their bodies. Like we're going to see them play longer. we're going to see them play more efficiently. That's why I wouldn't be afraid to pay some of these skill positions, whether it be a wide receiver and whether it be a running back. And then why are we boxing him in? Because we already see with Giannis, he's playing center to point guard. And we see it with Deebo Samuel. I think we're going to see a lot more of these interchangeable Worcester and Dreyer type players going forward. But again, man, I don't want to keep you unless you want to go another 20 minutes and have a bunch more questions for us. I don't want to burn you out too late, man.
Oh yeah, I better go for tonight. I definitely appreciate you guys having me on. We're definitely gonna have to do this again. We'd love to have you guys on the podcast as well for the NFC North. I feel like the Giants are always playing the Bears, so
yeah, I'm down to just talk Bears.
Yeah,
or NFC North, I'm down to join
anytime, man. I told you I have a coaching background, man. It's one of those things where we can compete. We share the same space as different podcasts, but like at the end of the game, we come together and we shake hands, and like that's kind of the networking you need to build. And so I'll give you an hour to 2 hours, whatever you need. If you want to come in and check us out Saturday night and watch some UFC with us, you're always welcome. Anything you need, man, you can use any portion of this podcast you want. Like we're an open book over here.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun having you on, and nice getting to talk to you.
Absolutely. So
give the people your plugs again, man. Give them your Twitter, give them your YouTube channel, anything you want to shout out before we close up shop.
Yeah, absolutely. So NFL Updated on Twitter, NFL Updated on YouTube, and also Instagram. I'm trying to kind of add that. I'm not doing TikTok yet, so we'll see.
Man, TikTok's for the kids.
So here's the thing, though.
You're trying to do that one. Get on TikTok.
If you had to tell people what's the best 5 minutes to get to know your channel, your identity, like what's the one interview, the one moment where you're like, you guys should check this out. This is where I felt like I made it.
Yeah. So obviously having a chance to interview from all 32 NFL teams, all the teams. The one that I really enjoyed the most and I feel like connected the most was if you've seen the movie Home Team about Sean Payton's life and everything, had a chance to interview the writer of that movie. He is actually, I can send it to you guys, but he is actually dating Sean Payton's daughter. So it was, he's also, his sister is married to Adam Sandler. So it was a tremendous conversation, and it was a lot of fun to talk, movies and sports and how he kind of grew up. So really for me, any type of interview I'm down for, because it helps me learn, and it's a lot of fun connecting. So check them all out. I'm in the process of kind of organizing them better into divisions. So you can kind of look back on all the divisions. If you're interested in looking at your specific team, your specific division, there's a podcast from all 32 somewhere.
Yeah, and being fans of the NFC North, anytime you need a quick Lions blurb, if you want me to come on for 5 minutes and give my input to an hour and a half, you got me anytime, man.
Let's do it.
I work remotely, so I got a pretty open schedule. So you just shout it out, man. You're a cool dude. Like I say, we didn't know how this was going to work.
Yeah.
You're a friend of a friend. I'm ready to a birthday party, and we ended up staying up all night talking sports. We'll do it again, guys. Thank this man for his time. Go check out this channel. Check out all those interviews. It's great. Have a good night.
Playing your shirt.